Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Crafting for Profit. We are the podcast that helps creative entrepreneurs turn their passion into a thriving business. Today's episode is especially exciting for those of you that are artists, designers, anyone that's dreamed of seeing their work on products around the world.
Today, we are joined by Carina Gardner, an accomplished designer, educator, and founder of Design Suite and the University of Art and Design. Carina has licensed her work to major companies like Riley Blake Designs and Carta, and she's made a name for herself by teaching other creatives how to break into the world of licensing and digital product sales.
So, whether you're a crafter curious about turning your hand drawn doodles into sellable files, or you're looking for a way to grow your brand through passive income, Karina is here to demystify this world for us. So, the world of licensing can be confusing, and we invited an expert to teach you all the ins and outs of this. She's going to share how it can become a major part of your creative business strategy.
So, as always, this episode has been re recorded, but if you're watching the live premiere on YouTube with us, we're over in the chat, chatting away with you guys. We can answer your questions. If you catch it after the live premiere or you're listening on the podcast, if you have questions, you can leave those in our form. You can find that in the YouTube description or at the podcast notes.
So, we're going to start by letting Karina introduce herself. And if you can tell us a little about your background as an artist and designer and how you found your way into licensing.
Hi, guys. So fun to be here. Super fun to be here. So my background is in education, actually. So my undergrad degree is in communications, but my master's and my PhD are both in design. During that time, I taught at the University of Minnesota. That's also where I got my master's and my PhD. They're both research degrees. So I was doing T-tests on short-term memory and logo design, of all things. And so I came out of that, and every time I'd have a degree, I'd have a baby. So I was like, I really would like to stay at home with my kids. But back then, COVID really kind of changed some of this. But back then, it was really hard to be remote. And I had the kind of degrees that made me a creative director, that made me work corporate, that would put me on committees at a university. And so I would have to be working full time. Also, my husband and I managed to rack up a serious amount of student loan debt because he was also in law school. We have 5.5 degrees between the two of us. And I was like, okay, like I don't have a choice. I have to work because I got these degrees. But I had a 3-year-old and a newborn. Good story here. I literally walked into my final committee review and I started to go into labor at that meeting. Like I was starting to have contractions and I was like, I don't know what's happening. And they were like, are you going to have the baby right here? And I was like, wow, that would be amazing. Like if I had a baby at my dissertation review, but I didn't. I got through it. They also totally passed me. So if you want to know how to pass a PhD dissertation review, my recommendation is being pregnant and going into labor. Okay. I had that baby 10 days later. My background is in design, and I decided to start a design business. In the midst of that, I learned all the ropes, all the wrong things, every mistake that you're going to make when you create your own design business. Back then, it was digital scrapbooking. So that's kind of how I ended up in the crafting industry. Along the way, ended up getting a scrapbooking contract with my mind's eye, a fabric contract with Northcott. You guys know now I'm with Riley Blake. I was the creative director at Carta, which is a sister company of Echo Park, which they built that company around me, which was incredible. I had a very interesting deal with Echo Park, and haven't left. Like done dishware, sewing patterns. Like there's a good number of things I've done in the industry. About 4 years ago, decided to get back into education because I had so many people asking how I was able to make so much money in the design space. Average designer who comes out with a bachelor's degree is making about $58,000 a year as of the 2024 information from educationdata.org. And some of the transparency we're seeing right now with education and, salaries that are coming out. And I was doing, we'll just say, a lot more than that. And people were like, I don't understand how you're making so much money. And I was like, well, I guess I could teach people how to do this. And it turned into Design Suite, which we've been doing for 4 years now. And then I knew we were teaching university level stuff. I had taught at a university. I knew that we were, but in the digital space, it's really difficult to say, hey, listen, like this is university level stuff. What you're going to do here is so different than anything else you're going to do anywhere else. So we're still a brand new university, the University of Arts and Design. We are primarily a graduate school. So we do a master's degree, a master's in fine arts, and we do an undergraduate design certificate. But that started in fall of 2024. So really new.
That's incredible that you were just like, I'm going to start college. Like, I don't know, it's just like my brain. I'm like, my goodness, my plans feel so little.
It's probably wise, Corey, is what I'm going to say. After the year I've had, and now I know what I'm up against, it is a process. And, people keep asking me, they want this for me and this. I'm like, okay, guys, like we literally have a 10-year plan in place. People don't realize, like when you sign up to, especially we're licensed in Utah. When you sign up, I signed that we would hand out transcripts for the next 60 years. Like you sign your life away in a way that people don't understand. Like it's a very serious business.
Wow, that's incredible. All right. So we'll get into a little bit more about your university in a little bit, but let's start out here by talking about licensing in general. So we probably have audience members who are like, I don't even know what licensing is. There are several ways to get your products licensed. So can you go ahead and give us an overview of what that might look like?
Yeah. Licensing is such a tricky word because I've heard it used a lot of different ways. But here's the bottom line. You're basically taking your artwork and you are giving it to somebody else and they're going to give you a royalty in exchange for it. So that the way we see it the most is usually in physical product goods like fabric or a planner or scrapbooking, where you're licensing your design work and the usage of it, and you still usually retain the copyright because you're the designer. For the most part, you can white label it. That's totally different business. Or you can also sell the full design off. That's still also licensing, and they can do whatever the heck they want with it. Usually there's a higher fee involved if they just own the design outright. Usually less of a fee if you own, you make less is what I'm saying. If you own it and then they license it from you. Okay. Now, this is where it gets a little hairy because people don't realize that using online platforms is actually licensing. So when you work for a specific online platform, for example, I design for Silhouette, I'm actually licensing my designs with them on that site. We don't always use that vernacular, like we don't usually talk about it in that way because it's a little different, because Etsy is actually not licensing designs, right? Etsy is you're putting your stuff up there and you're paying a fee for their algorithm and their audience. And so it's a little bit weird. I like all online platforms. So usually when I talk about online platforms, I talk about Etsy, Silhouette, all of these different things. And some of it is licensing and some of it is not.
That makes sense. I think a lot of times when I think about licensing, I think about the contacting a company and having them put your design on a product, whatever it is. But if you were selling, say, something on like Society6, is that licensing?
I think they're more set up like Etsy,
Okay.
Right, where you own your own shop directly within them.
Yep.
Now, that's where it gets really tricky. And that's why I don't usually love the word licensing. And I do like using it in the fabric realm or the scrapbooking realm and less on the online platform realm, because they're a little bit of both, right? Because they're kind of licensing it when they put it on a print on demand thing, like it's going through their system, right? So usually when I talk about licensing, I very specifically am talking about what you're talking about, Corey, like licensing out there with a manufacturer, licensing specifically with an entity that's going to use your design work, right? When I talk about online platforms, even though there's usually a licensing element to it, I usually just say online platforms.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. So, why do you think licensing is such a powerful opportunity for our audience? So, the artist, the crafter, the designer, and especially those who are used to selling like a physical or digital products themselves. So, they're making it. Why would they consider licensing, or why should they listen to the rest of this episode?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Most people don't realize it, but especially if a lot of you guys are building your own stuff in the Cricut software, you're building your own stuff in the Silhouette software, you're building stuff, okay? Your stuff is fabulous and you're a practical user, Like people who are practical users actually make the best stuff, not necessarily always designers, because you actually are going to use it. And that's what people want. I mean, it's like consumerism, right? Like you're making the thing. If you make the baseball thing for your son's team and it has a cute logo on it and you built it, like you should freaking sell it, right? Now, the problem is a lot of times you guys are all making it in software that doesn't make sense. You can't resell it from, and that's the problem. That's usually a problem we run into. So, in particular, when it comes to licensing things, whether you're selling it in online platforms and licensing that way, or you're working with a manufacturer and you're licensing it that way, first of all, there's a lot of money in it. Okay. And people don't realize that. The second thing is people always say the market's oversaturated, but that's just simply not true. It's not true for people who have great design work. And it's not true of people who have original design work, especially now with all the AI stuff coming out. And it's also not true because that market should expand dramatically over the next 20 years. When you consider the lifetime of what has been going on in the digital age, I've been doing this for about 17 years now. It has grown so dramatically in the last 17 years. And we're like this tiny little speck. Like when you look at the numbers, even on YouTube, like there's how many users, several billion users, but only 4% actually creates content. That's the same thing happening in the design world. There's actually a very small number of people who are creating content or design work, and only a smaller amount that produce regularly. And those are the people who are making the most money.
Wow, that makes sense.
I love that you talked about a little about it needing to be original artwork. I think that's an important point here that we need to get across, especially with all the AI tools and different things like that that people are using. Like we are talking about licensing artwork and original artwork, so your hand drawn artwork.
And when she says hand drawn, that's even hand drawn directly into Illustrator, right? It's hand drawn into your stuff. I think everyone's stressed about AI. I'm going to tell you based on the fact that I teach AI. Like we literally teach you how to use AI within our programs. And we're watching Adobe month by month add product information in there about AI. What you're going to see is some people rise above and others just kind of fall flat. And what I'm asking you to do, especially if you're listening to this, is the goal here is to rise above, right? Just like every industry is going to be affected, we are too, and we're already seeing it. But it's being affected in a way that is actually really great for the industry. Good designers are using AI to kind of understand what customers are looking for so that you can produce a product faster. And that's the difference. And if you're not using AI right now, I can tell you that it is a great starter tool. It's also a good tool for understanding the way that customers are thinking, feeling, needing their brand to be built. It is not the end result. We are really struggling to find an end result from AI right now.
I think that that's really important because there's a lot of, I'm just going to call it AI slop. There's a lot of AI design slop out there. There will be some of it on the market, but I think as we just see more and more things that all look the same and all look AI, that it's actually going to be the people who are creating original artwork that are going to be the people who are succeeding.
Yeah. In our program, we call that defining style. And so one of the best things you can do for your brand is defining style. And I actually have a book called Make Art That Sells. And in that book, we literally have a formula for defining style. And it's very easy to follow. It really helps you understand that your style as compared to your brand, those two things go together. And if you're like, I don't know if I have a style, it is developed over time. So don't worry about it. You will develop it whether you like it or not. We have designers that will show up to critique. I remember one of Simone, who's one of our Australian designers, she came in, she was showing stuff. She was like, Creed, I just feel like I don't have a style. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. The moment I saw your artboard in Illustrator, I knew it was yours. I hadn't even seen your name on it yet. And she was like, how? And I was like, it's your colors. It's the way you draw. Most people don't realize they already have a definitive style. Usually our job at the university or in Design Suite is to take that style and refine it and polish it. Because mostly what we see with people is they have a good eye, but they don't have good design sense. So they don't understand the vocabulary. They don't understand why something should be smaller. They don't understand that putting stroke lines with the fills in that way is going to be, deterring someone from buying. And so what we find is it's just polishing people's styles because it's already there. Most of you guys already have it. There are colors you're already drawn to. There are things you already like making. And that really will push that style. It's just polishing it up.
Very cool. Okay, so we talked a little bit about finding companies and using some like online platforms like Silhouette, those sorts of things. Again, this is a very nebulous sort of word when we're talking about licensing. But how do you go about even like finding people who want your artwork, who are
Yeah.
looking for licensed artwork? Where do you start?
This is a really tough thing because the design world has changed so dramatically. So it used to be you could go to a show. You guys remember shows? COVID kind of decimated them, but honestly, they were actually struggling before that. So there was a really big show in New York called Surtech that designers would go to and they would show their artwork. And then you would go get a licensing deal with, Target because they would walk by your booth and they would like your designs and they would love to work with you, right? That kind of merged into the stationery show, like the stationery and the Surtech show that kind of merged together. So designers kind of did that for a while. For a very long time in the design world, designers were using like agents, right? Just kind of like the book world where you'd have a literary agent. Designers would use an agent. I just saw one of the biggest agencies disband last year, and we're continuing to see that. Agencies are really struggling, and it's because of the way that digital works right now. So we teach business in a totally different way because of the way that I was able to build my business. And that is we like our designers to start with online platforms first and find their groove, build their style, build a following, build their brand. And then if they want to license with manufacturers, that's usually icing on the cake. We still suggest shows. Shows are still strong, but it depends on the show, right? So if you are in the fabric world, the show you'd want to go to, it's Quilt Market, right? If you're in the gift world, you're going to go to Atlanta Gift Mart or the Las Vegas Gift Mart. So shows are still the number one way because of networking. You shoot off an email, you are just like everybody else. Like you send your portfolio in, you are just like everybody else. And as a previous creative director, I will tell you, one of the biggest things I see that is really, really a pain point for me. And so if you're listening to this, please, please know, like, a lot of educators have never been a creative director before, so they don't realize this. If you send your stuff too early to a creative director, if you continue to send them stuff, they will not hire you. You're 3 months into design, you send me your portfolio, I've already written you off because you're clearly too new. Like your stuff isn't good enough to really make it out there, okay? Usually we're hiring people, and at this point, especially with creative direction, you will see this with especially fabric manufacturers. They want people with already followings, right? Now, people are grumpy about that. They're like, but I'm a great designer, but you don't have a market. So that's a problem. The second thing is, this is why I like online platforms. You haven't proven that your stuff is consumable. So if you can prove your stuff is consumable, it's much easier to get a manufacturing deal. This is what we're seeing across all industries, by the way. So if you're all like, whoa, like this seems so crazy. You might have a girlfriend who just got a book deal, 122,000 followers on Instagram, 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. She has a very specific niche in the medical industry, and Wiley reached out to her, not the opposite, right? So this is happening across all fields. And so if you're like, oh, it just feels so hard, I just want to be a great designer. Unfortunately, we're in a day and age where manufacturers want proof that what you're going to do is going to be successful.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. I think, Angie and I talk a lot about books as well because we're both huge readers, and we've both written our own design books, our own Cricut books, but the publishers came to us because, thankfully we both built up our followings. And I think it's a hard pill to swallow when you just don't want to be spending all your time on social media and sending emails, and you just want to make art, but making art today requires more.
Yeah. And I think the old traditional way of just making art for art's sake is kind of gone. I do think you should make fabulous art that fulfills you, that fills your need, but you also still have to understand the market. We have specific methodologies that we do at the university and in Design Suite that gets you there without using social media to begin with. But we actually ended up starting another program this year called Marketing for Creatives, which is a membership program, literally because in year 2, year 3, you have to go build a brand. And it's like every time I get to one place, I'm like, oh, shoot, like this is the next step that most of us have to take that we don't want to take and we need a little education on.
Definitely.
So do you find it easier to get your designs or your students into things like Silhouette or Cricut Design Space or places like that before approaching manufacturers? So do you think those type of things are easier to get into?
100%. And here's the interesting thing. When you're in a program like mine, we know the ins and outs of even the online platform. So like if I have a close relationship, which I do with Silhouette, or a close relationship with Caesar, or a close relationship with Sawgrass, like we were able to get certain designers in there that wouldn't have gotten in if they hadn't had that network, right? Like I can't even tell you guys, network is almost everything at this point. Like that's why I like shows still. Like the more face-to-face, really human contact, we all say we want it, and yet we rely on an email, which is very fascinating to me, versus having this human interaction. If you think that AI is taking over the world, then what do you have to do? You have to go literally the opposite. You got to go have human interactions so that you can build that network. So we were able to get so many designers into the Silhouette shop, which is, by the way, now closed. We were able to get lots of designers into a few shops that many of you guys don't know about that are rocking it, right? And it's because we know the metrics on what's going on, because I have 8 shops or so. So I can kind of see my own metrics to see what's working and what's not working. And that's really what we call the inside scoop. But yes, number one, online platforms. Here's another good story about that. So I own this other company called Miniloo. It was a wholesaler. We did these big deals, Nordstrom, 500 independent toy stores. Like it was a really very successful brand. I had 15 designers on that company. You know where I found them? Society6, Etsy. I like went to all the online platforms and I handpicked my 15 designers that I thought would give me the different diversity I needed for my coloring books and my paper doll sets. I like literally went, because here's the thing, they had stuff up that I was like, oh, that would be so easy for them to format and get it into this format for us. So it's like I handpicked whose stuff I really wanted to license. Now, if you think I'm doing that, think what the big corporations are doing. They're doing the exact thing. And that's why you see all these licensing agency closing down, because corporations don't need a middleman anymore. So if you're not utilizing online platforms, you've already lost, because you don't have the visibility that someone even like me who owns businesses, and I go out there looking for designers. Now I pull for my own designers because we have hundreds of designers in our programs. But like back in the day, I didn't. And so I would just use online platforms to pick and choose my designers.
All right. Should we do a commercial break?
Let's do it.
All right. Our commercial today is for our free craft fair essentials checklist. This is basically a checklist of free craft fair essentials. It's in the title. I mean, it really has everything you might need to pack with you the morning of your craft fair. Don't pack the morning of your craft fair. Pack a couple days before your craft fair. But this will help you not forget anything, because you always forget things, right? You get there and you're like, I don't have zip ties, or I need duct tape, or all of these other things. This list will help get you ready. I've been using it for my own craft fairs for more than a year now, and it's everything I need.
So if you sell at craft fairs, I would say this is everything you need, plus things you never even thought about, is the way I always tend to look at it. So be sure to grab the checklist now. And you can get that at link.craftingcamps.com/free checklist. And that's all one word, FREECHECK. LIST. All right, let's move on with the questions, Carina. Okay, so now we're going to really get into it and the not so fun part about this. Okay, legal side of licensing. What should artists be looking for when they're like looking at these contracts? Any red flags to avoid, green flags to look for, anything like that?
Yeah, I'm at this point, and my designers know this. I don't think it's worth doing an exclusive license these days. I really don't think you actually need it. There was a time where exclusive licenses were actually important. I don't think it is anymore. Even my bigger companies, I have non exclusive licenses. Now, it's per medium, right? So for example, I'm under contract for all soft goods with Riley Blake. So I can't go out there and do duvets and throws and pillows for anybody else, only Riley Blake, because I have soft goods. But I can take those designs and I can use them in SVGs. I can use them in sticker sheets. I can use them on clip art, and I can put them anywhere I want. So I would say be very careful about exclusivity. Okay. Because I feel like actually the people who really want exclusivity, they're like teeny tiny people. They're people who need exclusivity because they are trying to become bigger, if that makes sense. So that's one of the things I would look for. In terms of contracts, I mean, my life's a little bit easier. My husband's an attorney, so I do let him take a peek at these contracts that I will do. I think one of the things that you should always consider when you're looking at a contract is, will this hold me back or will this propel me forward? If you feel very strongly that it will propel you forward, even if the commission is high, and sometimes people will get freaked out by they only get like a 20% commission, like the company's taking 80%. I would tell you this from my years of doing this, almost always the companies who take the biggest commission from me, I've made the most money from. So it's ironic because people freak out. They're like, oh, I'm only going to get this smaller commission instead of a 50-50 or even a 60-40. I will tell you that in my experience, the companies who have taken 80% have always been the ones who have brought me in 20,000 in a month, 25,000 in a month. Like they're the ones that have the audience. And so they can ask for that because they're going to make me big money. And then they make big money on top of it. So be careful about kind of assessing that commission because you're going to want to ask some questions. One of the number one things I usually ask is, how many people do you have in your audience? How many people are on your list, right? Because that's going to really make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, if you're making 20% for a list of a million, that's a heck of a lot more than 80% of a list of 20, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, it's a numbers game at some point. I
Yeah.
love what you said about, is this going to hold me back or is this going to propel me forward? It should be something you think about with basically every decision you make about your business. And I think a lot of times we're just kind of going through the motions of like, okay, do this, do this, do this. And is it really building our business?
Yeah, I was just thinking I'm going to start asking myself that question about everything. So thank you. That doesn't even apply to licensing. I'm just going to start asking myself that every time.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite questions to ask myself. And then here's like another secret one that we talk about in our mastermind that I came up with. And it's due to activities that you have in your business. Many of you guys have crafting businesses. We started putting next to our desk, anytime you had to do an activity, you would look at it and the sign said, is this $1 million activity? Because if it's not $1 million activity, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And granted, I'm working with people who have teams. I have 2 relatively large teams that are working with me. We have faculty at the university and coaches and design suite and such. But I think that can apply to all businesses. Like, are you doing activities that actually will propel you forward, right? And that's really what it is. Like, is this $1 million activity? Because if it's not $1 million activity, why the heck are you doing it?
Yeah. I think that way, but I've mentioned this before, for right now, social media is not $1 million activity for me. And could it be? Maybe. But do I have the capacity for it right now to make it $1 million activity? I do not. So I need to focus on the things that I do have the capacity for that are moving my business forward monetarily. And social media is just not one of them. So I will post there occasionally. Sometimes I get in a groove and I'm like, ooh, I posted like 5 days in a row. But most of the time I'm like, why am I even doing this? It's not bringing in very much money at all. And I need to really concentrate on the things that are. All right. So I want to know more about this university because it's just bonkers to me that you just were like, yeah, sure, we're going to start a university. But I understand because I think that there is a certain need for what you're doing in this particular space. I think it's really cool. So you launched the University of Arts and Design to support like aspiring designers. So a lot of people who might be listening to this podcast, what inspired you? Like, why did you decide like, okay, I got to do it?
There's a lot of things happening in the industry. First of all, lots of people coming out with digital courses. There's nothing wrong with that. And if anything, I think it's really great because we're getting good practical information out there with digital courses. I myself have a digital program called Design Suite, right? But it became really clear that, and I took a couple of courses, like I took like a short-term rental course, and like a few others. And I started to realize there is nothing here to tell me if this course is going to be better than this course. There's actually nothing here except for social proof, like people reviews and stuff. And also if it was worth the price. And I had taken some stuff that were really, really expensive that literally were not worth the price. And I was like, oh, there is something wrong here. And I realized it's because digital courses aren't regulated. We're not regulated. And when something is not regulated, it means consumer buyer beware. Like we really have to dig in and kind of figure out if it's going to be something that's worth it to us. And it's really problematic because I go on Amazon and I'll go look at a review for something and it's like, 200 of them are great and one is wrong. And which one am I going to listen to? Right? You don't know. And I thought, okay, well, like what's something that's regulated, which is very clearly going to be like, this really is a thing. University is like regulated, right? And you have to be licensed. There are accreditation bureaus, which by the way, we are not, because a new university cannot be accredited. Okay. So we are not even a year old. But we are licensed. So that means we are licensed to give out master's degrees and certificates. Okay. We are currently licensed in Utah, California, and exempt in 17 other states, I believe. So it's a process. And now that I'm in this process, I know why nobody starts a university, because the process is long. And if you're a good starter and you're a good entrepreneur and you're like, I'm going to start a digital course, you would never start a university because you have to have long-term vision. You have to understand that you're going to be handing out transcripts for a long time. You have to build things to a certain criteria and curriculum. We had to hire consultants to help us with all the processes. So it's got to be money on the table. You have to put money away. I don't know if people realize this. In case something happens to your school, there has to be a certain amount of money put away based on the amount of money your school makes. Like, so we have bonds like sitting out there, just sitting in an emergency situation. People don't realize this. This was my favorite when I found out we have to have a library. You're a university, you must have a library. So it's like we have a digital library, we have a librarian. You have to have a registrar. You have to have someone who can look at transcripts and verify that they're correct. We have a registrar. So there are all these things, these little minute things that are actually important. Are they a little annoying? Yeah. You're like, well, I don't want to do this thing, right? But that's how we know it's regulated and that it's going to be good and that you're going to get your money's worth, right? Because you're going to come out with something called a degree that you can put on your resume. That's a legitimate thing. It's a very long-term process. We have a plan for about 10 years. We know everything's going to happen, all the things, all the anchor points that we have to have in order to make a great university. And really, in my mind, there was a great need. You're seeing this from Republicans and Democrats at this time. They're asking for transparency from universities on where students are going to land. And I was like, oh my gosh, we can provide that. Like, we keep data on our students. They're starting businesses. It's fascinating. But instead of writing a thesis for your master's degree, you build a business in our school. So your 2 semesters are capstone classes where you're building businesses, doing critiques of other businesses, and doing presentations on businesses. And so because of that, they usually ask at the end of the university, now what are you doing? We know what our students are doing before they even leave the university. We can say how much money they're making, what they're creating, how big their business is, how many followers they have. Like, I mean, we have all these data points. And so I always say, if you're on the outside looking in, then you're not doing anything. And I was like, the only way that I'm going to prove that our system works is by actually creating a university, following the rules of the university system, and then showing that while people are in university, we can make a difference there. Like, they can start learning how to do things. It doesn't have to be just skill-based. They can learn how to do practical things in the real world so that they can move forward and they can leave with a degree that's going to actually be profitable to them. And especially for art and design, I've seen art departments are like the bottom of universities because parents are saying, don't go get an art degree. Don't go get an art degree, right? It's not useful. And I'm like, what would happen if we could flip that switch? If the bottom department in universities actually was the most profitable department? What if that department actually did things. And I went and lectured at a couple of universities. One of them was BYU, Idaho. And I went and talked to their faculty. They're using my book, Design, Profit, and Prosper, to understand really like the basics of getting students to a place where they understand how to build their own businesses so that they can do art and make money from it.
That's pretty incredible. So this is not on our little list of questions here, but if somebody's thinking about joining your design classes or your university, do they need to have art skills to start? Do they need to come in thinking they're an artist? Do they need to have I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking like, I'm pretty good at, Illustrator, but I'm not very good at Procreate, so I'm just kind of thinking like where people might be coming from, where they're like, oh, I can like manipulate other designs, but I haven't drawn my own, those sorts of things. I'm just kind of curious what it might look like.
Yeah, that's a good first start and a good question. One of the number one things that I feel about design, and this is my feeling, is that design is a learned behavior. It's not an innate behavior. I think there is a lot of art that is innately, people are innately great and talented at it. But for the most part, design can be learned. And a lot of that has to do with software. So my undergraduate degree is in communications, not design. So that meant I had to play catch up when I started my master's degree in design. So we take people in all disciplines like biology, like random things. They can come do a master's degree in design with us. They do have a prerequisite semester to make sure that they're good, that they understand software. But I think design is just like anything else. And I actually even think art is like anything else. It can be taught. I mean, there's a reason we have it as a degree in universities because it can be taught. Most of the time, the reason people choose not to do it is because, first of all, art departments are picky, right? They only take the top 5% or whatever. And that's because that's due to class size, right? Which we have figured out how to deal with by being an online university instead of an in-person university that allows us more flexibility and freedom. But secondly, because people opt themselves out automatically because they feel like they're not an artist or because they haven't been doing art for years. So how could they possibly catch up? And our feeling is the more you do anything, the better you'll be at it, right? Like none of us were podcasters or YouTubers before, and yet here we are doing this, right? And it was crappy at the beginning. We made lots of mistakes at the beginning, and then we got better at it. I think a good growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset is that it doesn't really matter if you have the desire for it and you're willing to not judge yourself or compare yourself to those who've been doing it for multiple years, then you can be a designer or an artist.
Yeah, I think sometimes we think everything is like high art. I mean, and don't get me wrong, there are amazing artists out there, and I know a lot of them. But a lot of times design is about knowing, certain font sizes or, just all these different things that there's just these, rules that sort of exist. And once you know the rules, you can then break the rules, these sorts of things. And that is a little bit different than art. And I think that is a much easier place for a lot of people to get, where they're like, if I could learn the rules and learn how to make these designs in different software, then I think I could, I have ideas. I just need to know how to execute them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So there are objective part of design and then there's subjective parts of design, right? And that's what you're talking about with the breaking of the rules. Yeah, there are objective things that we all know. Sizes of fonts, the way a serif versus a sans serif reads because of the grounding versus capital, color choices, saturation, and hue. There are objective things in design that makes people great designers. Really great designers then know how to break the rules for them, right?
Yeah. I think one of the things that like I've been trying to do just in my own, when I'm designing things is to figure out like, okay, so does this look good overall? And then figure out how to make it look like, take it up a step, to make it look different, to make sure that it looks unique, those sorts of things. Because, I do a lot of things with quotes on them because I do things that you would make with a Cricut or sublimation printer or, and then all of my stuff is bookish and there are just like only so many quotes. So, I'm trying to come up with my own quotes. For those of you on YouTube, I have like a little design here for a Kindle insert and it says hot ghouls read books because it's for Halloween. Like it's not the only thing that's out there that says hot ghouls read books, but how can I make it my own?
Yeah. And that's differentiation and brand, right?
Definitely.
So once you've got differentiation and brand, it kind of doesn't matter, right? because like you said it was for Halloween, but those of you who couldn't see it, it was pink and orange with a little bit of black, right? That's differentiation and brand. Styling.
Definitely. Styling. I love it. It's one of my favorite things as well.
All right, so now we've covered some things. We want to know what the common mistakes you see artists make when they're trying to break into licensing. And then, is there any way they could avoid some of these mistakes?
Well, I did say one of them is going in too early to creative directors, right? I think that is always like, I talk to people all the time. They've started designing 3 months ago. They took a surface pattern course or something out there, which is fabulous. I'm so glad you're getting education. Any kind of education is helpful, in my opinion. So we will send people to other people's education programs. We'll be like, oh, you should go take this stationery course, is great. Or you should go take this Pinterest course, is great. We totally send people to other programs, not just our own, because we think there's a lot of great knowledge out there. But sending something in too early to a creative director is one. I think getting business advice from people who don't run businesses or haven't run businesses for years. That is a very interesting thing to me. And it's a very hard thing for me to even say, because it is hard to run design businesses at the same time as running education businesses. I have learned that the very hard way. But the more that you are in design and you're kind of seeing an art and trying to figure out how it all works, the more you're able to kind of see like what works, what doesn't work, especially because this industry is changing so quickly. But the number one thing is putting your stuff out to licensing, like to manufacturers, way too early. Instead, go give yourself a cushion of time and do online platforms. And everyone always asks me, what platform should I start on? Just go start on Etsy, just easy, right? Start somewhere simple, get going somewhere simple, get that artwork out there, and you will see after a year, first of all, you will go back and look at your stuff and be like, thank goodness I did not send that into a creative director. You will see it, I promise. You'll be like, oh my gosh, that was the best thing, that I gave myself a second to breathe and build out my business in a way that a creative director didn't see that work, because now I'd much rather them see this work, right? So that's probably the number one thing. The second one is, I think this whole idea that if you're an artist or designer, you can do it a little bit every day. You can do it once a week and you're going to make big money. It's a business, guys. It's a business. And anyone who owns a business, and Angie and Corey can attest to this, if you own a business, it is usually 20 to 40 hours a week, sometimes 60 hours a week. When I was the creative director at Carta, it was 100 hours a week. If you are going to make a dent in the system and you're going to make some money really doing this, it's almost 3 times as much time and money as you think it's going to take. And 3 times is the number I want you to remember. When you think you're going to spend $10,000 to get things going, just go in your head, I think it's going to cost $30,000. It's happened every time I launched a brand new brand.
I think that
What do you
happens a
guys
lot
think?
with us as well. I feel we're okay, we're going to launch a camp, right? Which is an educational thing that we'll do. We're going to launch a camp with a bunch of classes, and we're going to have to outlay this much money. And yeah, I feel 3 times is always we're oh, customer service was much more difficult this time than we were expecting, or, whatever it is, well, we spent a lot more money on, swag for our speakers, or whatever it is. It always feels like it ends up being more than I have in my brain.
I also underestimate the amount of time something will take every single time. So it's oh, well, this task, okay, so, putting something up on Facebook, that should be easy. I should be able to just do that in a few minutes, and it will take you at least 3 times as long as you're thinking in your head that task is going to take. And it's with everything. I feel like I am optimistic is the word I've been using lately. Because some people ask me, why do you have this on your website? I was I was optimistic. Someone asked me this morning about, it was a category. And I said, well, I was optimistic when I added that category and thought I was going to do a blog post a week to go in that category. There are only 3 in a year.
I think that happens. It's because we are optimistic, right? We're entrepreneurs. We're great starters. We're going to we're going to see this through. It's going to be amazing. I last night I was sitting down, and we have about 7 big projects up in the air right now that we're working on. Some of them are merchandising. Some of them are education. People don't realize this. We're a retailer. So we have multiple things going on. And that's why I have a team doing stuff. And even my own calendar, we teach our designers how to time block. If you go to Amazon, you guys, and look for Design Suite, you will find possibility journals and design suite planners and whatever. And like we teach our designers how to plan correctly. And yet still, even in my own time blocking, I will put something 1 hour and I'll have to sit there and think about it in a second and be like, will that really only take an hour? And I find myself pulling it down and giving it 2 or 3 hours because I'm like, I don't trust myself that that's actually going to happen in only 1 hour.
Yeah. And that's why I think what you said earlier in the podcast, where you're looking at that little sign that says, is this $1 million activity? Because there is not time enough in the day to do all the activities. So you have to make sure that you are concentrating on the things that are moving your business forward.
Yeah. And maybe that's the last thing. And we'll let Corey say it because that was amazing. Like literally the activities in your business, artists spend way too much time doing things that are like useless in your business. You should be, as a designer and artist, you should be 1, making art, 2, listing art. Like those are the 2 activities you should be doing all the time. Making the design work, listing the design work. We have a whole process model for it I just teach in my design boot camps. But often we think we have to have blog posts and we have to be on social media and we have to be running ads and we have to be talking to people and we have to be going to every single show. Usually simplest is best. So you start very simple and then you add on from there. Just because Corey and Angie are doing it or I'm doing it doesn't mean you actually should be doing it. I spend very little time on social media in my businesses in the first 5 to 10 years. I spend most of my time in social media these days, right? So it's like, you've got to really decide why and how you're doing things and where it makes the most sense.
You just got me. I feel like I have been making all of these different products for a while now to sell at craft fairs, and I have so few of them listed, like to actually sell online. So
awesome. If Corey can do it, you guys can too.
Totally.
Make that top priority.
I know. Once I get through this big craft fair this weekend, I will do it next week.
I love it. Well, priorities, right?
Yeah, totally.
The craft fair is going to make you money, big money.
It will make me money.
So because it makes you big money, it should be the priority. That's the other thing. We always tell our designers, and there's even a t-shirt that our designers like to wear. It's called Follow the Money. And it's because Carina always says follow the money. So like if the craft fair is the thing that makes the money, that's the thing you put the priorities and all the money and time and energy to. If listing is what makes you the money, if blog is the thing that makes you the money, then you should be putting your time there, right? I just happen to know for most designers, the blog isn't making any money. So you should be putting all your time in there, right? It should be in listing products. So paying attention to what actual activities make money. And by the way, your calendar should reflect it. So if my calendar shows that I am just, making all these blog posts, just doing a whole bunch of content, we will like reevaluate. My executive assistant and anybody else on my team who's looking at me, we will reevaluate it. I'll be like, is this meeting worth it, guys? Is this meeting worth it? Is this, because I really do I'm just like you, I have to go pick up a kid at 2:30, right? So it's like, there's this block of time that's available and he leaves, at a certain time. I wish I could say all my kids left at a certain time. My teenager has senioritis and cannot get her out the door. But what I'm saying is be smart. Be smart about those activities. They matter.
Yeah, I love what you said about reevaluating because I think that's something as a business owner we need to keep doing. You tend to get off track, basically. Like there are many shiny objects when you're running a small business, regardless of the type. And it's a shiny object syndrome and you go in the wrong direction.
I think it's also one thing, the opposite of shiny object syndrome is the object that's always been in front of you syndrome. I just made that up. Where this has always been the thing I did, so I'm just going to keep doing it. And for me right now, I was talking with Angie earlier and how I haven't filmed a YouTube video in a while. And that's because I kind of realized that even though I think YouTube is important for my business and it does drive money, it is driving less money than my Etsy shop right now. And so do I want to put on makeup and pants and get on video, or do I just want to work on my Etsy shop in my pajamas? I have this like feeling like I have to be doing YouTube, but YouTube is literally making me less money than my Etsy shop. So it was very hard for me to just say, I'm just going to take a little break. I'll still film content when I feel like it, but I'm not going to beat myself up for not putting out something other than the podcast for a while.
Yeah, that's super powerful. And that reevaluation should happen. And it depends on your business, you guys, but we do a reevaluation quarterly on activities and monies coming into the businesses, right? If you're an individual solo entrepreneur, which I was for years and years and years, that evaluation is happening on a weekly basis in my mind, like in a little meeting with myself. That's like, what should I be doing this week? What's actually going to bring in money? You do not have to have a big team to make big money, by the way, you guys. I made very big money as a designer. Okay. Sometimes there's a little bit of regret in my heart that I didn't just hold on to that because it was easier. It was easier times. But pay attention to those activities on a weekly basis if you're a solopreneur. If you're bigger and you have teams and stuff like that, it's a little harder. And I would say quarterly is a good way to look at it.
All right, Carina, this has been fantastic. Before we wrap up, we'd love for you to share more about your free Make Art That Sells masterclass, which is designed basically for our audience. It's designed for artists, crafters, and creatives who want to kind of break into this world of licensing. Can you tell us what it's about?
Yeah. So I have this great book. It's called Make Art That Sells. It's on Amazon. And I'd love to give you guys the masterclass for free. So you don't need the book. If you just go to makeartbook.com and you hop in there, this is the second link. So the first link will send you to Amazon so you can get the book if you would like it. The second link will give you the masterclass. Just use the code MAKEART, one word, no spaces, just MAKEART, all one word, and it'll give you for free. It's like 6 lessons. Spoiler alert, the whole thing ends with a formula. So like you learn every piece of the formula. I've tried to make it so fun, you guys. I'm an art guru. I love historical art. So every chapter is a different artist. So there's a chapter with Vincent van Gogh. There's a chapter on Picasso. There's a chapter on Norman Rockwell. And it leads you into one piece of the formula. So like you build out the formula throughout the whole book. It's a very easy read. By the end, you have the entire formula. There's a worksheet in the masterclass that you can just download, and then you can build your own style formula. So tried to make it really fun, and it looks like this. So
very cute. So for the podcast, if you can't see it, it's a picture. It's got like flowers on it, and then Carina standing there in a green dress. Yeah.
I should post this. We have a whole wall. So this is an actual painted wall, and I did it on
fun.
Instagram so people could see it. So I painted the whole wall, and then we photographed for the front of the cover.
So fun.
So fun. All right, Carina, thank you so much for coming on today. Like we had an amazing time, and I feel like our audience is really going to get something out of this. And I'm in awe of you starting a whole university. Like I can't believe it.
It's been fun, a little crazy, but fun.
That's awesome. So if this episode sparked any new ideas for all of our listeners, maybe you've been sitting on a sketchbook full of designs, or you wanted to turn your crafting file stuff into digital art, this might be like your sign to explore the world of licensing. And definitely start with that Make Art That Sells masterclass.
Yeah, so head to the YouTube description or the show notes for all these links for Carina's programs and resources. We'll have everything there for you. So if you're ready to take the next step, Carina is there to help you. And if you love this episode, don't forget to leave a rating and review on your favorite podcasting platform. And if you have that friend who is an artist and you're like, they need to know this information, be sure to text this podcast to them right now so they can get this information as well. And we'll see you next week.